CNN can now project that progressive Abdul El-Sayed has clinched Michigan's Democratic Senate primary, defeating Congresswoman Haley Stevens in what was a very bitter and contentious race. El-Sayed will advance to the midterm elections and take on Republican former Congressman Mike Rogers. That's coming up in November. Voters in 5 states punched ballots yesterday in several key primary races across the country. We're also keeping a very close eye on races in Missouri, Kansas, Virginia, and Washington State. Let's begin this hour, though, with the major breaking news coming out of Michigan right now. CNN anchor John Berman is at the Magic Wall. John, walk us through the latest numbers, because now CNN has made its projection.
Yeah, CNN projects that Abdul El-Sayed, seen as the progressive candidate, will be the Democratic nominee for Senate in Michigan. But man, it was close. Less than 1 percentage point separates him from Congresswoman Haley Stevens. The vote difference right now, less than 15,000 votes separate these two candidates. It was very close. And if we just look back over the course of the night until this moment, Abdul El-Sayed led when the polls first closed substantially. He's the light blue line. Haley Stevens is the dark blue line. But as the night went on into the morning, it got closer and closer until these lines were almost touching. But right now, we are projecting that they are wide enough apart that Abdul El-Sayed will be the winner there.
What's up, family? Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on those post notifications. So we got a lot to get into. This is one of those stories that the mainstream media is going to try to spin 6 ways from Sunday. But we're going to break it down the way it actually is. And we're going to look at the different perspectives, look at the numbers, look at what actually people are doing, not what the pundits are telling you people are feeling. And then I'll give you my thoughts at the end. So here's what we're talking about today. The Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, they thought they were riding a wave straight into the future. I mean, they really did. Abdul El-Sayed just won the Michigan Senate primary, as you've seen in the clip. Zohran Mamdani keeps making headlines. Ilhan Omar and the entire socialist wing of the Democratic Party thought the momentum was all going in one direction. They were planning a parade route already, but then something happened that sent shockwaves through the political establishment. The polls came out, right? The polls came out, and suddenly the celebration got real quiet. Not just quiet, like looking around the corner type of quiet. And then a 72-year-old lifelong Democrat from Ohio announced he was done, finished, voted blue his entire life since disco was still on the radio, and he walked into that primary and asked for the Republican ballot for the very first time. So we're going to break all this down: the polls, the Michigan primary, the internal Democratic civil war, the Ohio man whose story is hitting home for millions of Americans, and then we're going to talk about what this actually means for the future of the country. So let's get into it. Now, let's start with Michigan, because Michigan was supposed to be the coronation. The DSA circled this one on their calendar months ago. Abdul El-Sayed was going to march into that Senate primary and crush Haley Stevens. Confetti cannon, champagne, and democratic socialism has arrived. Article was probably half written already. But here's what actually happened. As you see on the screen, playing the clip, he won by 1%. 1%. Didn't even crack 50% of the vote. Bruised, battered, barely standing. And CNN couldn't even project it until the next morning because the race was that tight. And look, I'm not here to tell you that winning a primary isn't winning a primary. It is. He's the nominee. But here's the thing about a win that thin. It doesn't feel like momentum. It feels like a warning label. And when your big movement candidate squeaks by against a congresswoman who the establishment wasn't even fully behind, that's not a revolution. That's a close call dressed up like a victory. And this is where the numbers start to tell a completely different story than what the activists on social media want you to believe. Because while the DSA was still holding their little victory lap, the polling organizations started dropping their numbers. And family, let me tell you, it was not pretty. A new series of polls from Reuters, Rasmussen, Echelon Insights, even Fox News, and they're all painting the same picture. 55% of Americans said they wouldn't touch a Democratic Socialist president with a hazmat suit on. 55%. 55%. And it gets worse because independents, the voters who actually decide elections, not the ones retweeting from a dorm room, independents ran for the exits too. These are the people who don't wear a jersey for either team, and they look at socialism and said, no, thank you. Now, here's what this looks like in real life. Think about it like this. You got a friend who's not really into politics. They don't watch cable news. They don't argue in comment sections. They just go to work, pay their bills, take care of their family. You ask them what they think about socialism. They're not thinking about theory or ideology. They're thinking about Venezuela. They're thinking about the Soviet Union. They're thinking about stories they heard their whole lives about the countries where the government took everything and gave nothing back. And that's the baggage, family. And no amount of catchy slogans or trendy hashtags is going to wash that away. This wasn't one poll being bad. It was all the polls. Reuters, Ipsos, underwater. Scott Rasmussen himself pointed out these numbers haven't moved in a decade. Echelon Insights, who you see on the screen, underwater. Even Fox News, man. Fox News own polling showed the same thing. Socialism sinking, DSA sinking, and communism radioactive, straight up toxic. The political equivalent of that gas station, sushi roll, nobody's brave enough to touch. And here's the part that should really sting the strategists. The online buzz never matched the real numbers, not once, not for a decade. Turns out social media isn't the same thing as society. Shocking, right? Most would say that social media isn't real life. Going viral is not the same thing as going to the polls. A fired up comment section is not a coalition. A trending hashtag has never once cast a ballot in the history of this country. Let that sink in. These movements built themselves perfectly sized and optimized for retweets and discovered the hard way that retweets don't show up at the DMV to register to vote. And this is where the internal democratic civil war occurs, right? As you see, with the polls showing that socialism isn't popular as the left wants us to believe. The Civil War comes in because it's not just Republicans pointing this out, it's Democrats attacking Democrats. On one side, you got the old guard, James Carville, and I'm going to show you a clip in a second. Bill Maher, John Fetterman. I'm going to show you clips from all of these individuals, all three. People who have been reading the same electoral map for decades, and they're currently screaming into every microphone they can find. And on the other side, you have Zuran Mudami here, Ilhan Omar, and the entire DSA machine, absolutely convinced the socialist wing is the future, man. They think it's the future. And those two sides cannot both be right. Somebody's got to be wrong. Bill Maher on his show, showing actual footage from a DSA meeting in Denver, pointing out that the far left is overwhelmingly made up of affluent, ultra-woke individuals, and he basically told them they raised their kids wrong. And that's not a Fox News contributor talking. That's a lifelong liberal. But don't take my word for it, family. I want you guys to check out Bill Maher himself.
This crowd literally wants to get rid of our form of government, the Senate, but also, and I quote, replace the president and Supreme Court with an executive and judiciary chosen by and subordinate to Congress. Yeah, no biggie. Just taking the very essence of our government, which is three branches checking each other and shit-canning 2.5 of them. Who could be this nuts? I'll tell you who. Morons who are still wearing COVID masks in 2026. This photo is from the DSA meeting in Denver 3 weeks ago. Okay, I'm just going to say it. Since the far left, the far left, is overwhelmingly made up of affluent, ultra-woke white people, you raised your kids wrong. You told your precious brats that every brain fart was genius, and now those brain farts are becoming Democratic Party policy.
So there you have it, family. Carville was on camera with veins bulging out his forehead, talking about the progressive left with actual contempt in his voice. And man, it was wild. So I want you guys to check out James Carville.
Let's take in Michigan. And El-Sayed is highly competent, but he's way left. I see challenges from the quote, progressive left, unquote. And these people are too hard-headed to know that they're not popular. People don't like them. And but if you get a skewed turnout in a primary, you might end up losing a race that you should have never lost in the first place.
When you say progressive left, you sort of, there's a tone of contempt there.
So you were very wise. I hope the camera was able to pick up the contempt.
So there you have it. James Carville in his own voice, right? And Fetterman, John Fetterman basically said Bernie Sanders has never won a competitive election in his life, and he's tired of getting lectures from people who can't flip seats. When the inside of your own party sounds like a family Thanksgiving dinner that turned into a cage match, and somebody already threw the mashed potatoes, you got a problem. So this is John Fetterman here, family.
Bernie Sanders will never represent any more than 640,000 people in Vermont. That's all he's ever done, and he ever will do. He's never won an actual competitive election. And now why can't, stop giving me lectures on how to win. Bernie's not flipping seats. He is helping install volatile and dangerous kinds of candidates and now put, Democratic seats at risk. I've flipped seats. Now, he's never done that thing. I'm tired of his lectures, overall. And now he claims that he's not a member of the Democratic Party. Why can't the DSA people just, they should just run and there's their own party?
So there you have it, John Fetterman. Now let's talk about the man who broke the internet, right? 72 years old, lifelong Democrat, voted blue since disco was cool. This past primary in Ohio, he did something he had never done in his entire life. He asked for the Republican ballot. That's the whole headline, family. And somehow it hit harder than any poll we just covered. Why? Because polls are numbers on the screen. This is a real man, 72 years on this earth, looking at his own party like it's a stranger wearing his neighbor's face. Literally, our own man looking 72 years on this earth, looking at his own party like it's a stranger wearing his neighbor's face. And what he said next is important. He talked about chickens coming home to roost, and he said 35 or 40 years ago, both Democrats and Republicans together decided they were going to ship every job they could offshore. Textiles gone, electronics gone, cars mostly gone, pharmaceuticals mostly gone. They unboughted the factories and shipped them overseas, and an entire generation grew up watching their hometowns die in real time while Washington's advice was basically learn to code and good luck. Now that anger didn't disappear, it just waited, and now it's showing up at the ballot box wearing a Republican jersey it never expected to own. And the man was talking about young people seeing the wage gap, seeing the income gap, doing everything they were told to do, get the degree, get the job, get the house, get the life, and a six-figure career, and forgot to show up. And instead, they got the student debt the size of a small mortgage for a piece of paper that barely opens the door anymore. And when that frustration builds up and somebody hands them a microphone with socialism written on it, they grab it, not because they studied Marxism, but because they got a bill instead of a future, right? You don't get radical politics from comfortable, confident young people. You get it from young people who did everything they were told to do and still got shafted. They're basically angry. So when you look at that, right, they're angry for the simple fact that they have this student loan debt. They got a degree that doesn't translate into the job market to get an actual job. And now they want to get rid of and basically destroy the whole system in itself. And like I said, not because they studied Marxism. All right. So I want you guys to check this out from the Ohio man that he said it himself in regards to this matter.
I'm going to be voting for youth today. I've been a lifelong Democrat, and I'm 72 years old, 72-year-old white male, and I've been a Democrat my whole life. This past primary in Ohio, I went and asked for the Republican ballot, which makes me a Republican now. There's many reasons for that, but if I could just be philosophical for just a minute, and thank you again for taking my call. This chicken, this Democratic Socialist movement, this chicken has been coming home to roost for a long, long time. And you have to go back to the source of what's going on. 35 or 40 years ago, the Democrats and Republicans together decided that they were going to shovel everything, every job that they could shovel offshore that they did.
And I agree with that. It started with the Clintons. Basically, when they started shipping our auto manufacturing and our car industry over to other countries where we don't have U.S. cars anymore, for basically the desperation of cash flow, right? A lot of people would say, oh, during the Bill Clinton time, the country was booming. Yeah, but it was manufacturally stimulated by him basically selling off our jobs in our auto manufacturing company and all the things that he's saying offshore in the name of getting quick cash. So it's manufacturally being boosted by money that we got in exchange for selling off the fabric of this country, which is true jobs, true ownership, and actually being USA strong. And that's what I get frustrated about. And also, like he said, and I agree, it's not just a Democratic thing when it comes to Bill Clinton and the Clintons doing it, but it was Bill Clinton and the Clintons who started it, and then you had typical rhino politicians working together, worrying about party over the people that are supposed to be serving as public officials and as public servants. So you have these typical rhinos who are still, but they're moving out uh, more surely faster now since Trump came in, our President Trump being not the typical politician who say one thing and do another, right? So they're moving out more uh, quickly and surely. You got the John Thune still, and that's a typical politician I'm talking about from the Republican side who's in on it. And somebody's pulling the puppet strings because the simple fact is, why wouldn't you want to pass the Save America Act when you can to uphold election integrity? But you saying you could if you would. Typical politicians say one thing, say another, put on an act that's informative and never get no results done. However, make sure you're propped up for your own self-interest. And that's why I agree that Democrats and Republicans back then were basically working together to basically offshore our jobs in the fabric of this country to enrich themselves, making back-end deals and getting kickbacks and so forth.
And the ones that weren't bolted down, they shipped first, and then they've unbolted the rest of them and shipped the rest of them. So if you're a young person in this country, we don't make any textiles, we don't make any electronics, we don't make hardly any cars, we don't make hardly any pharmaceuticals.
And it makes us susceptible to have to succumb to other countries and basically getting what we need. And if you think about it from a obvious standpoint, if another country is basically controlling us from the resources that we need because we don't make them anymore, we sold them off, then we have to pay them, which then causes us to print money in Washington. And the more money we print causes inflation because we don't make anything home to be self-sustainable on our own as a country, in which a country should. So how long are you going to have a country?
And so you've got a lot of young people who are seeing this wage gap. And by the way, I'm a Republican, and you're seeing this income gap. And so essentially they're fair game for this movement. They see this movement as an opportunity, if not to gain back some credibility or some life, a better life. They look at it as a way to burn the system down.
Okay.
And
Jeffrey there in Kent, Ohio, Republican.
So there you have it, family. Now let's zoom out for a second because Ohio isn't just one guy's story. Ohio used to be the ultimate swing state. Voted twice for George W. Bush, voted twice for Barack Obama, a state that generally could not make up its mind. Those days are over. Ohio is now solid red. Republican supermajority in the legislature. Not close, not competitive, done. So when a 17-year-old lifelong Democrat in Ohio switches parties, that is not a random data point rattling around in a spreadsheet. This is the entire state story compressed into one man, one ballot, one moment. Ohio didn't flip overnight. It drifted year after year, election after election, until one day the swing state label just quietly stopped applying. And the question that should keep Democratic strategists up at night is this: is Ohio the exception, or is Ohio just early? The comment section under that man's story filled up the exact same confession over and over. Same thing happened to other individuals' families, right? First time in life, asks for a Republican ballot. This ain't one guy having a moment. This is a pattern, quietly, without a press conference, without a hashtag, without the DSA's permission. People are moving, and that's what should terrify the strategists more than any single poll number. Polls measure what people say when a stranger calls them on the phone. This is what people are actually doing in the privacy of a voting booth. No cameras, no peer pressure, no Twitter mom watching. How many more are out there who haven't said it out loud yet? And here's the thing about the DSA and the socialist movement. They read the pain correctly. They really did. They read the pain correctly. They saw the frustration, the debt, the rent that keeps going up, the wages never catch up, the degrees that don't mean what they used to. They identified the problem and they just wrote the prescription wrong, because the answer to broken capitalism isn't socialism. That's been failing everywhere. It's been tried for a century. The answer to broken institutions isn't burning them down and hoping something better grows in the ashes. That's not a plan. That's a feeling dressed up as a plan. And the problem with movements built entirely on frustration is they don't have a stopping point. Once you convince people the whole system is corrupt and needs to be destroyed, you don't get to decide where the destruction stops. You lit the match and you don't control the fire. Now, to be fair, I want to acknowledge something. The Democratic Party is dealing with a genuinely difficult problem. Their base is pulling them in two completely different directions. The activist wings want revolution. The establishment wing wants to win elections. And those two goals are, at this point, fundamentally incompatible. The activists control the energy in the online narrative. The establishment controls the money and the institutional power. But neither side can actually deliver what the other needs. And the activists can't win general elections with their current message. And the establishment can't generate the kind of enthusiasm that gets people to show up. So they're stuck with each other. And the voters in the middle are the ones walking away. So from my perspective, what we're watching right now are the early stages of something bigger than just one election cycle. The old coalitions are breaking apart. The working class voters who used to be the backbone of the Democratic Party are leaving. The union households, the manufacturing towns, the people who remembered FDR and the New Deal, they're gone. The party replaced them with college-educated suburbanites and activists, and those two groups don't want the same things. Meanwhile, the Republican Party is becoming more of a multi-ethnic working class coalition than it's ever been in my lifetime. And that's not spin, that's what voting patterns are showing. And when lifelong Democrats in Ohio start switching sides because they feel like their party left them first, that's not a trend you can reverse with a better press release or a new messaging consultant. That's a breakup, and breakups take time to heal. And if they heal at all, you know what I'm saying? So here's where we are, family. The polls look fantastic if you're not wearing a DSA pin. Socialism underwater, communism radioactive, a lifelong Democrat in Ohio switching sides for the first time in 72 years. The DSA winning the primary by skin of their teeth and calling it a victory feels like a victory lap, doesn't it? Well, don't get too comfortable. Polls are just a snapshot. Elections are a turnout contest, and the same machine that dismissed all of this as a conspiracy theory for years doesn't disappear just because one poll had a bad Tuesday. The bigger question is whether millions of quiet voters are reaching that same conclusion as that one 72-year-old man from Ohio. If they are, Michigan wasn't a celebration, it was just a warning shot. So now, family, let me leave you with this. There's a reason the Bible says in Hosea chapter 8, verse 7, for they sow the wind and they shall reap the whirlwind. That's the whole problem with movements built on slogans and feelings and hashtags. You don't plant nothing and expect to harvest something. You sow wind, hot air, slogans, online hype, comment section energy, acting like a movement without ever building real electoral muscle. And eventually that wind comes back around as a whirlwind, and it shows up in the polling, it shows up in the election results. It shows up when your own party elders start turning on you in public. And that's what we're watching happen in real time. The DSA had the microphone, they had the energy, they had the momentum, but energy isn't a foundation. And now they're reaping what they planted. Close primary wins, polls underwater for a decade, lifelong Democrats walking out the door. And that's the life wisdom for today. You can't build a house on slogans and expect it to stand in a storm. The foundation has to be real. And if you build your movement on energy instead of substance, don't be surprised when the energy runs out and the whole thing collapses. And that's what I got for you today, family. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think the socialist movement is actually losing steam, or this is just a temporary bump in the road? Hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you don't miss the next one. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.